Good morning, boys and girls, and welcome back to the southern wing of the Stink Bug Works. I made a video earlier today, and when I went back to review it, everything that was important to be showing you was up out of frame. And, I'm here talking about this and I'm pointing at that, and you can't see squat. And it needs to be down here pointing at this and pointing at that while I'm talking about it. Or if I'm talking about something that's over here, bringing the camera up to where you can see where I'm pointing. So, bad photographer. Welcome back to the Stink Bug, boys and girls. Today I want to talk about a little bit of progress, and I want to talk about tools. Somebody asked me about tools, and somebody also asked me about soldering the leads on rocket motors. And I've soldered the leads on many, many motors, but I haven't done it on rocket motors. And I look inside the motor, and the magnet wire that they use looks like ordinary magnet wire, but these leads in many times are not the magnet wire. In Steve's motors, it's just the magnet wire brought out. Many times when they put them together, they'll add an extension. And so his comment was he was having a hard time soldering it. And without destroying the thing, I looked in here and you can see that the insulation on the wire ended right there, and then the wire itself went into the hole here in the connector, and it appears to be a minimum amount of solder because this thing is not bulging with solder. It looks like it's just the bare minimum amount of solder. So, solder will attach to these wires. Now, the question is, what kind of solder? So, when push comes to shove, always get Kester. When push comes to shove. But this may not be your regular lead tin solder. This might be some special Blasto 5000 solder. So I just am not 100% sure. But if I'm faced with the problem with getting solder on here, this is what I would use: a solder pot. Because it's all the heat you need. The solder's already flowing. You just merely dip the part in that deep, and solder flows that deep. That's the cool thing about a solder pot. Good tool to have. Steve, back in the days, and I'm trying to think when this would have been, and it was probably the late 1980s, early 1990s. Steve was fooling around with Aviox motors, and in addition to cutting leads short to fit his super high performance airplanes, to keep everything tight and compact and as low resistance as possible, he would frequently shorten motor wires and such. And motor wires are basically these magnet wires, and that's a piece of copper coated with enamel, basically a plastic coating on a copper wire. So it's a spray-on or paint-on plastic coating. And this solder pot, the solder's hot enough to melt that plastic coating. And see, there's some of it right right there. Plastic coating mixed with solder and air. Oh, solder pots. Yeah, I talked about solder pot. The redneck solder pot. Take a drag link socket, clamp it in a vise, solder in it, take a torch. Guess what? You have a solder pot. Don't have quite the temperature control, but you've got a solder pot. So back to Steve and the motors. So these leads would be coming out. He'd be playing with them, shortening them or rewinding them. And they were just these magnet wires. And so he took this pair of tweezers, and if you look real close, you can see the bottom jaw is kind of like a little V, and the top jaw is kind of like a little tooth that fits right in that little V. And he would take each individual wire coming out in a strand. Now this looks like it might have 7 or 9 strands in it, and he would take each individual wire and grab it and mechanically scrape off that enamel. 9 times per strand, and he grew tired of it quick, and he discovered a solder pot. A solder pot is the ticket that it'll just vaporize that plastic rather than spending time mechanically. And he said, "Here, Bill, you can have these." And it's like, oh, okay. And I used them a few times, and then I got a solder pot. So there you go. There's a cool tool. Here's another cool tool that I just got done using. I am making, as you can see, the cooling jacket here for this motor. I still need to have the other bulkhead on here, so I will glue this on today. So I'll slip this on, glue it. I'll pack the inside edge with carbon fiber, that stuff I created, the carbon fiber mask, whatever it is, and stick that in there. And then when it's all said and done, I'll come on in the inside, chuck this up in the lathe and spin it, and then just take like a little Dremel tool or something and just grind out until the diameter is the right size to slip over like this side. And then there you go. Then here's what I made this morning after I did the first out of frame video. So now I'm concentrating on keeping things in frame. Here is the piece from which I am going to make the cooling gazintas and gazatas. Now, I want to keep the profile as low as possible. So my goal is to have the outlet pipe. Here we are. Here's a section of. Here's a section of. Same stuff. Okay. Here's a section of. My goal is to have the outlet pipe that high off the surface. So I'll have to look at where along this bend I will cut it. And then I'm going to fill this whole little area in with that carbon fiber mesh stuff. So this thing will just basically be the level pipe coming out of a carbon fiber blister on the carbon fiber jacket. So it should be cool. That's my plan there. To do these bends, here's another cool tool you gotta have. Two tools. First, you have to have a torch. I mean, a serious torch. And what you do, brass works just opposite of steel. With brass, you heat it up to where it's glowing orange. So you have that torch set up right here in front of you, and you heat it up to where it's glowing orange. And then right here, you have like a 1 quart Pyrex measuring cup full of water. And so you're heating this up to where it's glowing orange, and you can see where I ran the heat. And so it's glowing orange, and I'm kind of focusing on this area, but I'm getting the whole thing glowing orange. It's glowing orange. It's glowing. Quench it immediately. With iron, that'll harden it, or steel will harden it. Brass does just the opposite. It softens it. So you quickly cool it, it softens it. Then you take this tubing bender, and what this tubing bender does is you put your tube in here like this, and as you pull down on the sides, the bit of tubing stays parallel to here and parallel to here, and it starts wrapping it around this brass bushing. And this brass bushing supports the inside diameter and keeps it from crushing. So that's the cool way with this. And you got to pull a little on this side, pull a little on that side, pull a little on this side, pull a little. You work it. You don't just go. You finesse it, and you'll get a nice job like this. Then you reverse the heat treating process. You pull out your torch, and you heat it up to where it's glowing orange here, and you very slowly, over the next minute or so, very slowly move the flame. Move it away from the flame, but very slowly. So you're letting it's cooling, but not real fast. And even out here, you're still in the flame until where you can't feel the flame. Then you can, just let it air cool. Don't quench it. Just let it air cool. And then you can kind of feel when, okay, it's getting cool. And that'll reharden it. It won't be this hard, but it'll be harder than that hard. And there, you have your perfect 90-degree bend that you can cut off. You can cut off you can cut it off right about there. Although you want to add the thickness of the cooling jacket, so cut it off right about there. What do you think, boys and girls? Until next time, Jet out.